Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mindfulness with Christ, episode 4 to be exact. In this episode, I sit down virtually with Mr. Brian Cuban, and Brien is an American attorney, author, speaker, and activist. And his activism kind of revolves, or it does revolve, around his personal experiences and battles with addiction, drug use, and eating disorders, which, I'm so glad that he uses his platform in the way that he does and that he shines a light on this, because I think sometimes men get left out of the conversation when it comes to eating disorders. Anyways, in this episode, like I said, we just basically go through his story and how he overcame his inner battle. And and if you think, hey, Brian Cuban, that sounds familiar. Well, the Cubans are a pretty well-known family. He is also the brother of Mark Cuban. If you heard of Shark Tank or the Dallas Mavericks, then you know who I'm talking about. So anyways, let's jump into it. Okay, so just for disclosure, I hit the record button, so we're officially on. But how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Where are you located?
I'm located in Tennessee, just outside of Chattanooga.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you're over there in Texas right now, Houston,
Dallas.
correct? And Dallas. Dallas. Do you love Dallas?
Yeah, I've lived here the vast majority of my life. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh.
Oh, cool. What's your favorite thing about Dallas?
My family, my family. I mean, there are many things I love about it, but this is where my family is. My brothers are here. Obviously, my wife and my cats and everyone. So
yeah, that's always a good reason to love living somewhere, honestly. And I mean, it seems beautiful enough in general. I've never been to Texas, but I hope.
But you can stick yourself anywhere, but family, home is where the family is. That's where family is.
Yeah, no, exactly. I 100% agree with that. But anyways, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with me today. It's interesting, actually. I was looking into people who are really knowledgeable and who talk about eating disorders and their experiences with it. And that's how I stumbled upon your book.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it's kind of interesting because then after I found out about that book, then I found about your book, The Addicted Lawyer, and it kind of unfolded into so much more than what I initially, like the tip of the iceberg, and then it just kind of keeps going. So I think it's pretty incredible how you've shared so much of your life experiences and your stories with other people to help them.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So when did you come out with the Shattered Image book?
Oh, Shattered Image, man. I think I wrote that about 2000 and when was that? 2008 or so, 2009, or sometime in that time frame, maybe even after that. So Shattered Image came out first. And then The Addicted Lawyer came out just a few years ago.
Good. I think it's really cool, too, that you wrote the book Shattered Image, especially being a man, because I feel like a lot of times with body acceptance movements or, again, just, love your body or whatever kind of, those type of guidelines, you never really see men included in the conversation. It's always geared towards women. And I feel like it's kind of crazy because men experience so much of that as well.
Oh, sure. Body image is very stigmatized for men. It is for women too, but for males, it's exponentially greater. We are taught that we grow up being taught that is kind of a female thing, right? To focus on body image, and even though I'm about 25 to 30%, and maybe even more now, those are my last stats of all those with eating disorders are male.
Whoa!
Although we're only 1 in 10 will ever seek treatment for one.
Whoa, that's crazy. Yeah, because I feel like with men, there's like this pressure to be strong and don't open up about your feelings, and it's considered weak to reach out for help. And so, and more so than what's instilled in women. So it's like, of course, you'd have lower ratios of men who reach out for help eventually.
Absolutely. Being vulnerable is something that males tend to not like to do because that is considered weakness, when in reality it's a strength.
Right.
You can be vulnerable in a safe setting. I tell people it doesn't mean you have to go cry on a street corner. Don't cry. You allow yourself to explore your feelings in a setting that's safe for you, whatever that is. And that's okay. That's strength. That's courageous. But you're talking about years and years and decades of stigma. So it'll take time. But I think that stigma is changing to some degree in different demographics. When I developed my eating disorder, this was 1979 when I first began to, or 1980 when I first began to binge and purge, really, at Penn State, as a student at Penn State. Nobody was talking about eating disorders for men or women. And I didn't know what an eating disorder was. It was just something that I fell into as something that made me feel okay, at least for those few moments where I was engaging in the act of binging and purging. But after those few moments ended, then the shame swept in, the all-consuming shame of engaging in a behavior that I didn't understand, but inherently felt this was something guys don't do. Guys don't stick their fingers down their throat. I would, in vomit, I would go into the dorm bathroom, the community bathroom, and flush the toilet and do all those things to camouflage the sounds. And you have to remember, 1979, 1980, this was even before the singer Karen Carpenter passed away in 1983, she passed away from complications related to anorexia, and it brought eating disorders into the pre-digital national spotlight. And so, but it also kind of cemented eating disorders as something that only females go through.
Right. Exactly. Especially because, there's a lot of talk about magazines and the effect it has on women and modeling and, especially now with social media, seeing these Instagram models and stuff.
Sure. And I think what magazines have done is lowered, I think all of these, you have to remember, in my age, we didn't have this. Your images were the people you saw every day, right? The popular kids, the kids who had their girlfriends, the kids who were holding hands, and in my mind, they're all good looking and thin. So if you want to get that, you have to be that. Right. There were no magazines per se. This was well before the internet.
Right.
But I think now in the internet age and the digital age, what has happened is that the putting out these images, these perfect images, and you see it all the time too on Instagram and Facebook. Everyone's airbrushed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're airbrushed almost for some people beyond recognition.
Yeah.
You shouldn't shame people for that. Everyone has their own journey, and but I think what has happened is that the state of normative discontent has been lowered significantly. And what normative discontent is that, say, everyone everywhere, at least in the industrialized world, looks in the mirror one day or another and says, that sucks, right? I'm having a bad hair day. I'm having a quote unquote fat day. My pants are tight. I have a pimple. Life sucks. I don't want to go out.
Yeah.
But it goes away and you do go out. It doesn't impact their lives.
Right.
And it's when it impacts your life and all of a sudden you're not leaving the house and you're engaging in these destructive behaviors around that is where it becomes a problem, right? But we all have those moments where we're just, oh, no, I just can't deal with that. That's normative discontent. Mm-hmm. What has happened is that I think the age of the internet, the digital age, has lowered the threshold where people might have looked in the mirror and said, okay, that sucks, and get on with their day, where they're now engaging in different unhealthy behaviors to compensate. Does that make sense?
100%.
So before it was up here and now it's down here, and more people are tripping over into things like eating disorders and body dysmorphic disorder and it's self-harm and drugs and things and substance use and things like that compensate for their self-image. And I don't have the data around that, but I believe there's a strong correlation in that that set point has been lowered.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And what you just said also made me think of, maybe before social media and before cell phones and stuff, you might go to the mall, say, and go shopping and see the mannequins or the photos of the women or the men and maybe feel like, oh, that comparison, but then now it's like, you don't get that just in public. You go home, you turn on your phone, you go on to Instagram, and then it's right there in your face in your room.
Absolutely. It's almost your 10 suggested follows are people on Instagram who look perfect. You see your friend, you see your friend airbrushing their, whatever they use, the filters, filtering their photo, and And I have to be that. And especially for younger people, that can be a lot of pressure. Okay, so I'm going to filter my photos. Mm-hmm. And it's really, and that again contributes to the lowering the set point of normative discontent.
Oh, yeah. So when did it hit you that you have an eating disorder, or not even an eating disorder? Because like you said, you didn't know what it was at the time, but when did it hit you that like, okay, I've slipped into something that I am unaware of? Because I've struggled with binge eating, and I would, I still do struggle a lot with food addiction stuff. My binges are more under control, but I would binge eat as a kid or in high school, really, is when fad diets started hitting, and I would do it more. My point is, I didn't know I was binge eating until a certain point. What was your point?
And as a point of fact, binge eating disorder is the fastest growing eating disorder, and it in fact affects men more than women.
Yeah.
Men suffer from binge eating disorder. I wasn't until my 40s where I really started to have any self-awareness that I was engaging in in eating disorder behavior. So, because you have to remember, it became my identity. And when it's your identity, it's almost impossible to step back from it and say, this is a problem.
Right.
So it was 2 decades before I really starting to be able to look at myself and say, this is an issue. And it was my mid-40s before I saw treatment.
Wow. What were some of the first cues or signs to you that you were that it was an issue? You know what I mean? Like where you had that moment of clarity, like, whoa, this is not.
It's interesting. I think that the only bright line, I remember the bright line moment when I first binged and purged, it is such a accumulation of snapshots in a progressive that I don't have a lot of eating disorder bright line moments like I do addiction where you have events, right? Right. Yeah, the first time I did cocaine, the first time I took a drink, the first time I did this. Mm-hmm. So, but I remember in sort of the tipping point in terms of moving forward in recovery, it was 2007 or 2008. I was reading a story about a Brazilian model named Carol Ann Reston, who had passed away from complications related to anorexia. And her weight was just, I don't want to give numbers because it's triggering, but her weight was very low at the time she passed as compared to her. And I remember, I was looking at the comments online, and there were comments from guys. And I think it was really the first time that it really hit me that I was not alone and that I have a problem.
Right.
Reading that article. And then, ironically, the article was about a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. The internet, I feel like, has a lot of negative things that it does, but then there's also those bright moments like what you experienced where you were able to read comments of other men who had experienced it.
And sure, there's, as in everything, there's a dark side and there's an upside. You can find people, it's not as much now because the sites ban them, that encourage different types of eating disorder behavior. But you can find a lot of support on the internet, guys, men and women. And now we have different organizations that either educate or provide advocacy, Project Heal, NIDA. And so there are different organizations that provide support and education. Mm-hmm. There are even those for men. We have the National Eating Disorders Association for Men that's run by a guy named Andrew Wharton. Very good organization.
Mm-hmm. Which of these organizations did you get involved with during your
recovery? I got very involved with NIDA when I first started becoming an advocate. Not so much anymore because of philosophical differences. Mm-hmm. But I got very involved with the National Eating Disorder Association.
That's interesting.
Also, I'm on the advisory board of Project Heal.
Wow. That's awesome that you took your situation and you decided to utilize it. And that's kind of literally what I'm trying to do with this podcast is, okay, I've had my struggles with mental health. I've had my struggles with this and that. And it's like, you kind of hit that point where you're doing better and you're just like, you know what? I don't want to just walk away and be better on my own. I want to help.
I realized I was in a unique position as a guy, and also because of my brother, as someone who has a last name that's kind of known.
Right.
And so I felt that it would be a good thing to raise awareness. And I hope I've done some small part over the course of my advocacy.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've gotten emails or letters from people who have
all the time, men and women.
Wow, exactly.
Teens and adults.
Mm-hmm. And you've done a lot of speaking too, as well, correct? Like you've done youth conferences and whatnot.
Sure, I've done a lot of speaking. not as much. I used to do a lot of college speaking about eating disorders, but I'm older now. There are a lot of younger people who are advocates and doing great work. So I think I've kind of aged out of that demographic, and which makes sense. I think when you're there's a big difference between 45 and connecting with a younger audience and being 59. And but that doesn't mean that I don't advocate every chance I get when I'm asked. But I totally get that.
Yeah, but also, I mean, if you are going to see it that way and you feel like your age demographic is shifting, then you can, like you're doing now, speak to the audiences that are older and who are still dealing.
You know what I do? I don't target. I just speak.
Exactly.
I speak my truth. I speak my experience, and whatever your age, if you can take something from it, that's all I do. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. The only thing I'm an expert in is my story.
That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah. So I keep spacing. You'll have to forgive me. I'm newer to the podcast. This is like my third episode that I've ever done. So
thank you, Con.
Thank you. You're so kind. But so were you at first nervous to publish your book or to share your story? And not even your book, but I mean, even on a more personal level with your family. I mean,
as far as Shattered Image goes, Shattered Image, it was a very different experience from, say, The Addicted Lawyer. Shattered Image was a healing experience. My family didn't know until I wrote Shattered Image.
Whoa.
They had no idea of my eating disorder struggles.
Whoa.
People ask me all the time, how could they not know? Well, you have to remember, until I didn't struggle with eating disorders until college, and I was out of the home. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to Penn State. So I came back, and then I went straight to law school, and I was basically out of the home. I graduated law school, and I moved to Dallas, Texas. I'm out of the home. So I wasn't around my siblings and my family enough for them to see behaviors. I was from 18 years old on, other than home visits, right? I was pretty much out of the house.
At home visits, would you, like say it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, would you just not purge at those events, or would you just do it even more secretly?
Not Christmas because I'm Jewish, but
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You go upstairs and flush the toilet and turn on your shower.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it's normal. It becomes who you are. It's just normal.
Right. Because like in your bubble, in your world, in your image, it's like this is the norm, and so you don't think anything of it. You're just doing what you do, and then you don't even realize the contrast.
My coping behavior was my eating disorder and who I was, and my identity.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because you don't even really see that change happening because you're constantly with yourself, so it kind of creeps onto you almost while everyone else.
You don't really have that kind of self-awareness. It's just what you do. You're not, when you binge and purge and you're hiding it, you're not thinking, oh, I have this eating disorder, I have to hide it, right? There's shame. It's more, I don't want my parents to know my shame, so I'm going to hide it. So you're not really even thinking I have an eating disorder. You're thinking this is shameful. And I don't want, my parents will be ashamed because I'm engaging in this activity. Now, it's, again, you have to remember I was going through this at a time when there was not nearly the awareness. So teens and adults may certainly have more awareness today. Yes, I have an eating disorder, but this is still who I am.
Right. And I feel like too, with addiction, there's this sneaky thing about it where you hide it naturally. Sometimes you don't even realize you're hiding it, but you just do it. Like with myself, I have memories of late at night sneaking to the fridge and eating cake in the sitting on the floor just eating cake in the kitchen where no one will know that I'm there. And it's just crazy looking back because I would like hide wrappers, and like I wouldn't even realize I was doing it until I started to catch, like you said, you start to become more self-aware. So, and I heard an interview with you where you said a pretty crazy story about cocaine and trying to hide it. And that was just your go-to, you know?
Yeah. Hiding it in fake electrical outlets.
Oh gosh. Yeah, do you want to retell that story? I'm sure you've said it many times, but
this is not eating disorder, this is addiction. And
right.
In 2000, except for people who don't know, my brother owns the Dallas Mavericks. In 2000 and 2006 when we were going to the NBA championship for the very first time. Man, I'm getting old. It's 2006, 2007. But I got tickets from my brother, and I took those tickets and I was trading them. I got them to give them to friends, but I didn't give them to my friends. I was trading them to my cocaine dealer. So my cocaine dealer shows up at my house, and I give him the tickets. He gives me the cocaine. I go running up to my home office. I dump it all out on the desk, looking at it like this. I'm Scarface. But cocaine had long stopped giving me the feeling of love and self-confidence that I had achieved when I did it in a bathroom in Dallas, Texas, the summer of 1987, and instantly became psychologically addicted to it because for the first time in my life, I loved myself while I was high. Mm-hmm. I had never loved myself my entire life, and now, oh, wow, this feeling. So I have to have this feeling again and again and again, and cocaine and alcohol took over my life. But and with long-term cocaine use, you get paranoid. So I did some lines, and it was a bad high. I got all paranoid. I take the cocaine, and I hide it in my closet, and I drive to a Home Depot where I bought electrical faceplate outlets, a drill, and a saw. I drive back to my house, and I go to the drywall upstairs in my house, the closets in the bedrooms with the drill, bzz, 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 and I take the saw, and I cut these small rectangular holes, these fake electrical outlets, and I take the cocaine and put it into these smaller Ziploc baggies, and I hide it behind all these fake electrical outlets and close them up. Bzz, 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 bzz. I do some more cocaine, trying to capture that high. And it's funny, it was never, when I would have these, it was always now just chasing the feeling that was never going to come again. Mm. And it was never, maybe I have a problem. It was, well, maybe I need to change from Grey Goose to Jack Daniels. Maybe I need to change drug dealers. Mm. And the paranoia again, thinking the cops were outside. I peek out the window. Do I see any lights? I go back to the electrical outlets, bzz, 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 unscrew them, take the cocaine, put it back in the big Ziploc baggie, go to the bathroom, drop to my knees, and flush it down the toilet. Now it's $900 worth of cocaine. The next morning comes, and as so often happens when a perceived negative event surrounding addiction gets in the rearview mirror, I wake up. Did I just flush $900 worth of cocaine down the toilet? Did I do that last night? Who does that? I'm such an idiot. There's another game tonight. I need more. Oh. So I call my brother, and I get 2 more tickets. I call my drug dealer. He shows up at my house. He said, dude, you did all that last night? I didn't want to tell him I flushed it down the toilet like a moron. I mean, I said, yes, I did it all. Give me more. He said, okay, here you go. Back up to my home office, dump it out on the desk, rinse, wash, repeat, do some more. Again, just chasing the high, just pain and shakes and just awful. I kind of triggered just thinking about it. But then the paranoia comes again, back to the electrical outlets, bzz, 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 hide it again. This is the next night. Mm-hmm. Do some more. Nope, not getting it. Back to the electrical outlets, take it back out again, go to the bathroom, the bathroom, my master bedroom, drop to my knees like I had done so many times, praying or hoping, wanting someone or something to take away the pain of my addiction. And so I didn't go through this and flushed it all down the toilet again. Mm-hmm. They say when Dallas flushes, it ends up down in Houston. So I think some people in Houston got kind of high that night. The insanity of addiction, right? Doing the same thing over and over the same way and expecting a different result. But addiction's not insane. It's a biological brain-based process that affects so many of us. Our loved ones, like eating disorders, our loved ones, our children, our friends, ourselves, millions and millions of people. And that was my quote-unquote insanity, the microcosm of it. And that was my 20th year as a practicing lawyer. Lawyers struggle with it like anyone else.
Goodness. Did you feel like there was a bit of a culture, especially at the time of your addiction to it, where lawyers were doing cocaine and that was kind of the thing to do to stay up for?
Absolutely. You have to remember, the culture shifted a lot. The 80s was cocaine and cocaine, crack cocaine, and regular. The people I hung out with only did powder cocaine. That was, I mean, you have to remember, I should probably talk about privilege to an extent. You have to remember, I recovered. I went through addiction and privilege, and I recover in privilege. I have privilege. I'm awash in privilege that a lot of people don't have, whether it's demographically, whether it's by color of skin, whether it's economic. It would be disingenuous for me not to acknowledge that. And I had privilege then, too. I was only a powder cocaine guy.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then lawyers were certainly doing it, and I only hung out with people who did cocaine. And I had 3 marriages fail in the meantime as a direct result of my cocaine addiction and alcohol use. I had 2 trips to a psychiatric facility. I came close to suicide in 2005. So it was a roller coaster of pleasure and pain, and it was not fun. I mean, you look back at it and say, okay, you can isolate it into moments, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't remember. If there were fun moments, I no longer remember them. I remember the pain. I'm sure back then, as I went through, you say, "Oh, this is great," but I don't remember them. All I remember is the pain and the trauma.
Mm. Yeah. And you said that you were using to chase the high and chase the feeling of love and acceptance. Did you also find yourself using in order to kind of maintain like a physical homeostasis? Like when they say like you're going through withdrawals, you kind of...
Absolutely. I developed a physical dependence to cocaine that was awful and you end up using and using just to, it got to be like this. I was partying all night with cocaine, and then I would pop a couple Xanax that I would buy illegally and sleep through the day. And that in my life got to be, and this is what led up to my near suicide attempt in 2005, just this brutal cycle of not even wanting to live, only exist. Party all night, sleep through the day. Oh, this day's gone. Great. Party all night, sleep through the day. And it's hard to be a functioning lawyer like that as well.
I can imagine.
I was showing up to court under the influence of Xanax, under the influence of cocaine. I was doing cocaine in the bathrooms of the courthouse and to try to even myself out. It was miserable. I mean, it was miserable.
Yeah, that was another thing that popped up in my head is, did you feel like the lines between your outward reflection in the image of the lawyer or the husband and the brother, and then the inward true kind of reality of what your situation was, did they blur? Was it a struggle to kind of...
It wasn't even a matter of blurring. There was no line. For it to only be a blur, there has to be some self-awareness.
True.
They were gone. The lines were gone.
Yeah, it's like forget the lines. We're just dealing with it at this point.
It was just who I was. And I had surrounded myself with people who would just prop me up as that.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is when, the people you surround yourself with kind of encourage a certain lifestyle. So you can make excuses like, oh, it's okay. We're all doing it. They're doing it.
Well, yeah, of course you want to surround yourself with those people. Otherwise, you have to look in the mirror.
Exactly.
The mirror you want to look in is the mirror they project, right? Not the mirror your family projects, because that's shame. Not the mirror your spouse projects, because that's shame. Not that they would actually even feel shame. They'd love you. Right? They want to help you.
Right.
But you project the shame. When I look into the eyes of the people I did blow with, I project acceptance. They love me. They don't judge me. But that's who I'm going to hang out with.
Right. Like they see that aspect of you and they're not running away or they're not doing what you would perceive.
I was supplying the blow. They're not running away.
Oh gosh, they're running to you at that point.
Yeah, we're not running away.
Yeah. So how many times did you have to go into a rehab facility? Did you use a rehab?
I never went to residential treatment. I got sober in 12-step.
Oh.
And for those who don't know, the most well-known alcohol-focused 12-step is Alcoholics Anonymous. But I got sober in 12-step and through therapy. And I dealt with the underlying childhood issues, trauma, and all that through therapy. And there was a lot of underlying childhood trauma. Trauma threads its way through life. There's a strong correlation between trauma and substance use. And I think it's important for people to understand the difference between causation and correlation. Causation means every time someone goes through this, it'll happen. No. Some people will go through what I went through and develop this. Some people will go through what I went through and develop this. It doesn't happen to everyone. So there's a big difference. But I grew up with a lot of fat shaming. I was bullied in school over my weight. I was a heavier kid bordering on obese. I was even physically assaulted over my weight. And there was a lot of trauma. And that trauma shaped what I saw in the mirror.
Do you catch yourself still kind of going back to those days? Or at this point, are you kind of, for the most part, healed over it through your therapy?
There's a difference between obsessing and reflecting. Do I reflect? Sure. Of course I reflect, because I need to reflect to do what I do, to advocate, talk to you about it, right? Mm-hmm. Do I obsess over it? No. Have I forgiven those kids? Sure.
Yeah.
You have, and again, I decided what forgiveness means to me, right? Mm-hmm. That's not what it might mean to anyone else. People have gone through awful types of trauma, and I never tell people what forgiveness should mean to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I feel like forgiveness isn't really linear. I mean, sometimes it's like a renewing process. At least for myself, with people in my past who have hurt me, I'm like, I forgive them, like, and I don't feel resentment. But then it might pop up again, and then I have to re-go through it.
Perfect examples. I've at one time or another, I've been friends with these kids who physically assaulted me on Facebook.
Wow.
And sometimes it pops up where I want to say, this is what you did to me. Do you remember? Well, you're being all nice and this great father. But then 40 years later, and then I remember they're not 14-year-old kids. Mm-hmm. I did forgive them. They're 59-year-old men. Mm-hmm. And what I hope for them is that they are raising their children differently and teaching them about bullying. Because when we grew up, there was no awareness on bullying. You got bullied and you were weak if you got physically assaulted. You got beat up for your lunch money, and you were weak if you went to your parents or your brothers, right? You had to fight back. But I wasn't a fighter. I was a middle child kid, very docile, went in summer camp, voted the easiest kid to get along with. Oh. And the easiest kids to get along with don't fight back.
Right.
And so I just wasn't of that build, of that genetic. I didn't have that gene in me to fight back. So no, I of course I forgive those people.
Yeah. And also I feel like too, it's crazy because you never know why people do the things that they do. Like, and I know it's so cliche, but the expression hurt people through certain experiences that I've had in my life. I'm like, crap, man, that's kind of very often true. You know, it doesn't make it right, but
it's particular. And let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about this in Shattered Image. When my freshman year in college, I was living in a dorm, and we had this. There were four of us, and we had two of the room. There were two kids who roomed together. There was me and this guy called Dan, a heavy kid. He wore these Hawaiian shirts, so we called him Hawaiian Dan. And the two other kids were good-looking kids. You could tell they were popular. They came to me and said, "We would like you to move so we can have one of our friends came in, live here." And all of a sudden I'm thinking, and I said no. And all of a sudden it's the same thing over and over again, being bullied by the popular kids to me. Mm. I decided that if I made Hawaiian Dan's life as miserable as possible and bullied him, these kids, I would be accepted. Because in my mind, having been bullied by the popular kids, having been physically assaulted by the popular kids, and this is before the internet, these were the prom kings, the sports stars, the guys getting their first dates, going to the football games, the after-school parties. If I bully Dan the way they bully me, I will be accepted. And the funny thing about that is those kids didn't accept me, no matter how much I took the bullying, right? I never became part of their group. And so I engaged in a relentless campaign of bullying against Hawaiian Dan. So these kids would see it and I would be accepted. And it's one of my biggest regrets to date is that I do not know his last name. So I can apologize to him for the things I did and said.
Dang it.
I became a bully. Repeating cycles, because in my mind, that was the way to acceptance.
Yeah. Maybe he read your book, or he, will hear it in one of your podcast episodes or something on YouTube, and maybe he's heard this story.
But that is one of my biggest regrets today.
Yeah.
That I have no way to, that I never said I'm sorry to him. But I'll tell you what did happen. His brother came up to campus
Oh,
His
snap.
brother was huge. His brother
Duh.
came in my dorm room, grabbed me by the neck. If you ever bother my brother again, I will come back here and beat the crap out of you. I never bothered Hawaiian Dan again.
Oh, snap. Hawaiian Dan plot twist. He has an
Yeah,
older
and
brother.
I had it coming.
Dude. And that must have been some intense bullying for his brother to come up on campus. And
It was, I mean, again, it was intense. I bullied him. I mean, obviously, I still feel ashamed from that because it is a memory that has stuck with me all these years. Also, obviously, it was intense enough, and I feel bad about it. And to me, and I certainly was not a victim here. I am not the victim here. Dan was the victim.
Right.
But the whole thing was just trauma, right?
Mm.
Dan was traumatized. I traumatized myself by engaging in this awful behavior because I remember it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I love how transparent you are about it because that's something that it takes a lot to be able to acknowledge doing something like that and experiencing something like that. And again, like you're doing with advocating for men who struggle with eating disorders, it's the same thing for people who might feel shame for their past actions or might be in the middle of doing something similar to what you did back then. So I think it's good to just talk about this stuff and say, hey, we all have good in us. We all have bad in us.
If you ever listen to this podcast, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh man. But I don't know. Yeah, I definitely think you shouldn't feel shame though. I know it's hard to let go of it, but it seems like you do all that you can to try and help other people.
I mean, shame is a part of living, right? Shame, it's how it impacts you. That's a difference. Shame is a human condition. We're human. People feel shame. It is how it envelops you and directs your life. That's what matters. Mm-hmm. Shame can be a motivator to good things.
That's true. Pain can be a very good motivator. Shame, pain, the feeling of unacceptance. It's like you can either, it's almost like a tool or you have an option of how to react to these negative feelings that you have.
Everything is about context and reaction. So I still, of course I still feel shame over what I did with him. Did to that young man.
Yeah.
At that time. He's my age now.
Yeah. And now it motivates you to continue to do what you do. It's probably one of the many things that pushes you to advocate and help other people who are in similar situations today.
I need to do one of my videos talking about that incident again because I don't talk about it much since I wrote the book. Yeah. But people need to know that I was an awful bully in college, at least for my freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah. No, I think that's good that you're so honest and vocal about that. And again, honestly, I really do have a feeling that Hawaiian Shirt Dan, which honestly, he sounds pretty cool, not going to lie.
He was from San Diego.
Dude, he sounds like a cool guy. Yeah. Like, what?
And I remember so much about him, but I just don't remember and what he looked like.
I
just don't remember his last name.
Dang it, man. But anyways, I swear he's read your story. He's had to have. That name he would have seen your name and it would have clicked. Someone in his family would have had to have seen it. So I feel like in my heart that Hawaiian Shirt Dan he heard your story and if not, in the book, then in your video you're going to make. And I think he knows that you're sorry. That's kind of where I sit with it. But anyways, also you said you were in AA and I know I actually went to
AA. We don't really talk about that in terms of, I'm at 12 step. Let's just call it
12 steps. So there's a difference between.
No, there's not, but we're really not supposed to. I don't want to put myself out there as a spokesman for the actual organization.
Got you. Okay. All I was going to ask with that is, I know with 12 step, they kind of have the mentality of once an addict, always an addict. So do you feel like you view yourself as recovered or recovering?
I don't call them. I never use the word addict.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of stigma to that.
Right.
As an advocate, people can call themselves whatever they want.
Right.
But as an advocate, I never use that term. I consider myself a person in long-term recovery. I can only speak to my recovery. I don't obsess or around whether I'm always in recovery, whether I'm in danger of relapse. Every day, I just try to work on being a good person and doing the next right thing for myself and for others. And that's worked well for me over 13 and a half years into recovery. But I don't view we could get into talk about the disease model and things like that, but I just don't view it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I view it as a fluid process. Mm-hmm. And where I am today is not who I am today, is not who I was when I first went into recovery.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
I was 5 years in recovery or 10 years in recovery, right? We're always changing, hopefully for the better, mm-hmm. and hopefully improving.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. But like you said, what works best for you, or what, as an advocate, what people want to call themselves, or what works best for themselves, because I don't think it's good to have basic guidelines, but to an extent, I feel like there's also whatever works for you.
We have to distinguish between what scientific evidence says works. Okay, we know if you do this, this, and this, there's data out there that says you maybe, that people will only, this many people relapse in 30 days, 60 days.
Wow.
And so there's evidence out there like that. But in terms of all the other things, in terms of religion, right, or higher power, and all these other things, whether you're in 12-step or whether you're in Celebrate Recovery, which is Christian-based, and all these different things, that is much more difficult to quantify.
Right.
All these other things. So whatever works for you. If standing on your head, if going to church works for you, do that. If going to a synagogue works for you, do that if that's part of your recovery. I don't tell people what their path should be. I just know my path.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you said, you're an expert in your own story, and everyone has their own story, and they're so different.
That's right. And I don't impose my journey on anyone else. I can't, mm-hmm. right? I meet people where they are. People come to me all the time for advice. What do you want to see happen? And they say, well, I want to see this. It may not be my path. We have what's called harm reduction. Where especially with opioids and heroin and opioids, where people are on different medications to help them wean off heroin, but those medications may have a slight opioid effect. And so hardcore people may say, well, you're not in recovery, you're still doing this. But how does your life, I say, how does your life look? How does your family life look? How does your job life look? What do you want to see in life? How are you progressing in life? That's what I look at. I don't have a dogmatic view of recovery where you were either using or not using. You were either drinking or not drinking. I just don't.
Yeah. I think things are kind of, especially these days, very black and white, or viewed as black and white, but really there's so much gray involved, and there's more than one form of success, or more than one, the path that you should take can have many forms,
There are many paths to recovery.
Yeah, which is a good thing. There's a lot of ways and things you can do and choose.
Absolutely. Like we said, some people go to 12 steps. Some people go to Celebrate. Some people go to Refuge Recovery. Some people go to Smart Recovery, which is cognitive behavioral therapy based. So there are many different paths, and that's only a few of them. Mm-hmm. Some people are in medication-assisted therapy treatment, which is Suboxone and things like that. They're just and they get along just fine in their lives.
Yeah, and okay, so on the topic of recovery or moving forward on your personal path, once you did decide, or once you started making the transition into getting closer to sobriety and freeing yourself from certain things, was it linear for you, or was it, okay, some progress, take a few steps back, take a few steps back?
From the time I officially began my recovery, April 8th, 2007, I have not, quote unquote, reoccurred.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, it's been linear. Have I had struggles? Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. But I deal with, I go to meetings and 12-step meetings, and I have a therapist. I've been seeing a therapist right now, teletherapy, but he's been my therapist for 15 years. No shame in therapy. I think everyone should get a little.
Yeah.
So no, it's from the standpoint of my emotions and my thought process and internal struggles. No, that's certainly not a straight line. From the standpoint of if you're just going to define it by, am I drinking or not drinking? Am I using or not using? Yes, it is. I have not relapsed.
Right. And I wanted to ask that because I think some people might get discouraged, whether it be food addiction, alcohol addiction, cocaine, fill in the blank, it can be discouraging. Like, oh, I'll never get better. Oh, I did it again. It's a lie.
Shame. Well, let's go pre recovery. Did I have countless mini relapses where I said, I'll never do this again. I'm ready. And then the next thing you know, that's in the rearview mirror and I can control it this time and it's all good. Sure. Tons of those. Tons of those. I get it. But now here I am 13 and a half years later.
Yeah. Which is, congratulations, by the way. That's incredible.
So it can be done. And the key is, from my standpoint, what matters. For me, it was figuring out what really mattered to me. What were my in 2005, I was right back out when my brothers, I had a 45 automatic on my nightstand. My brothers took me to a psychiatric hospital. I was right back out. And so that wasn't the moment.
Right.
But in 2007, standing in the parking lot of that same hospital with my girlfriend after she came home and discovered I'd had a 2-day blackout. She had gone for the weekend. And she didn't know I was struggling with drugs. She didn't use it.
Oh, man.
So, and we had been dating for less than a year and drugs everywhere. And she's a lawyer like me. And she actually stood by me. And we dated for over a decade while I rebuilt the broken trust and found recovery. And now we celebrated our 4-year wedding anniversary yesterday. So not all relationships will survive it, but ours did. But part of it was because she's a saint. And the other part of it was I had to do the work for me, not for her.
Right.
Because people do leave. Parents pass away. Children die. Pets die. Trauma happens. And those are all excuses to relapse, all
right.
Wrong excuses to relapse, right? Triggers, not excuses. Sorry, terrible word. Triggers to relapse. And so it has to survive all of that, right? And for some people you do, and for some people it doesn't. And so I lost my father 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, July. We were like this. He lived across the street from me, across the street. And we were just so close. And I could have just sunk back into lines in a bottle, but I had a lot of recovery. I had a base. I understood what my triggers were. And I relied on my wife, my family, my brothers, and my community, my recovery community. And I got through it.
Mm-hmm. Good for you. And that's great. Like, again, like you had the tools, like in your mental health toolkit, you've learned, you've grown since you have started this journey. You have the support system that you needed. I'm sure you didn't self-isolate, even though maybe it was tempting to. Did you feel like you self-isolated all during that time, or?
During which time?
During the passing of your father.
No, I was with my younger boy. No, I relied on my 2 brothers.
Good. Yeah.
And my wife.
Good.
No, I was never alone.
Exactly. And I think,
did I cry alone in my bedroom? Absolutely. I mean, I would go to his grave every day. Fortunately, he's also buried walking distance from me. I would go to his grave every day and just bawl. It was actually very therapeutic because you have to let it out, right? You have to. Crying is good. Crying is the body's way of healing.
Yeah.
And men do cry. Men should cry. And I did, and it was very healing. I still go and have good cries at his grave. Mm-hmm. So, sure, I relied on the people who love me and the people I love. Yeah,
that's really good. I'm glad that you had that system, because I feel like sometimes with depression or with mental health issues in general, your natural inclination can be to isolate, but sure. That's actually the exact opposite of what you should do, because that's where you can fester and really kind of dwell and ruminate.
Absolutely, and it would be a strong reason for that to happen. But and my brothers and my wife were very good in making sure they were around and making sure I was given permission to wail, right? Letting it's okay,
right?
And understanding that there was nothing. I mean, there's nothing anyone can do, right? You have to go through it.
Yeah.
And it's losing someone is traumatic. And it's certainly, I know people who have lost people and relapsed, their children, and tragically lost a child. But you have to just go through it. There's nothing anyone can do but love you. And it's like addiction sometimes. There's nothing anyone can do but love you. You can't make somebody want to recover.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So what does your, mental health routine, or what are some of the things that you do today to kind of keep you at what my therapist calls homeostasis, or a place of balance?
I practice a lot of mindfulness, a lot of mindfulness. Mine goes on in the shower, in hot showers, where I just release everything. And I'm always mindful of the fact every day, it's something I wasn't for so many years, that all I have control over are my thoughts, feelings, and how I react to them, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm always mindful of the fact that the vast majority of negative thoughts are not based in fact.
Oh, yes.
And I get into, our thoughts are not facts. I get into the shower and I just release all that and think about what's going on. I can't control the election other than my vote, right? I can't control this. I can't control that. I can't control the people screaming about partisanship, or I can't control the rising other than what I do with my mask. I can't control I'm not going to go and refresh the Johns Hopkins COVID charts every day, right? I'm watching the numbers rise and freak out. I have only control over how I act and respond and feel and think. So I remind myself of that every day in the shower. I run. I go on runs where I listen to audiobooks and get lost in my film. Big fiction reader, big thriller fiction reader. I get lost in my books. And so I have changed my routine. So I make sure I keep in a routine versus, because idle time can cause more time on the internet and on Facebook, where I take breaks from Facebook and social media, where everyone right now, we're in especially angry and volatile time. And where you could easily be drawn into arguments and discussions on things that have no resolution.
Right.
And only serve to play upon themselves, right, to trigger depression or trigger past feelings, where it can be a trigger to drug use or this or that. So I do my best to stay on the beam by understanding that the vast majority of things in my life are not in my control. What do I have control over?
Right. And that's something too.
But it's not always easy. It's not always easy.
No. Oh my gosh. It's freaking hard.
Because you want to react. What? You're for that candidate? You want to react. And calm down, step away, turn it off, take a walk. And I've done things like master classes. And again, I mean, they're not expensive, but some people may not be able to do this. But I do master classes where things like Stephen King teaching about writing and things like that. So you can find master classes on crochet, on whatever you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
Whatever these things you're passionate about, you can find a master class online and watch it and learn. And I do that as well. I love to write.
Oh, really? What do you like to write? Fiction, I'm guessing?
I'm working on my first fiction novel called The Ambulance Chaser. It's a legal thriller.
Ooh, that's so cool. Is it like a murder thriller or just legal as in like there's a story going on?
No, it's not a courtroom thriller. It revolves around murder.
Oh my gosh. When do you think that will be ready? I don't want to put like a date on it because I know that can...
Yeah, I don't know. It's the manuscript's complete, but they're filling some plot holes and doing things. So we'll see.
That is so exciting. Oh my gosh. I can't wait till it comes out. I'm going to have to buy a copy and read it.
Yeah, please do. You'll be the one. But,
oh, that's amazing. But yeah, no, like what you said about change, that personally is something I struggled with a lot in this past year, pre-COVID. I'm not even saying like with COVID, I had to deal with change. I mean, pre-COVID, I had a lot of change in my life, and, you know, change can be like one of the number one causes for anxiety, and stress. And it's like you said, once you learn to say, you know what, I can't control this. And then, you know, like, as well as you said, however you handle, like for me with my spirituality, I'm like, I give it to God. It's out of my control. Like, you know what? I just have to let it be. The things I can't control are going to happen. And then it's a process, like kind of like forgiveness. You have to go back to it. But when you do have those moments of just letting it go, it's like,
sure. And I just try to live very, very, simply. There's in the Jewish religion, there's a phrase called tikkun olam. That means changing the world with acts of kindness. And that's how I try to live. Just one small act of kindness at a time, and I find that keeps me balanced.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So Judaism has really helped you through your walk as well.
Culturally, I don't consider myself a very religious person, but culturally, absolutely.
Oh, good. I feel like culture is something that in America, a lot of people, I don't know. For me, I kind of lack that culture in my life. And I feel like that's kind of a common theme in the area where I was raised. But I think it's incredible that like you had that culture and that tradition.
Yeah, and I lost relatives in the Holocaust, and
wow.
There's so sure. There's a very the culture of it is very important to me. I just did not grow up in a religious family.
Yeah.
My parents weren't weren't religious at all. So that's yeah. But the cultural and spiritual aspect is very important to me.
Yeah, 130%, because it's like, I feel like it helps add more meaning to your life. Like we're doing these things because of X, Y, and Z, because it's
Absolutely,
passed down.
just trying to do the next right thing.
Yeah, exactly. But so what are some ways that people could find you or see some of your work or your books? Or
They can go to my website, briancuban.com. I'm on Twitter at bcuban. I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn. My website has my blog. You can see the things I write. I put out videos. I'm much more of a video blogger now than I am writing because it's easier. And COVID kind of spurred me to change the way I do things. And now I have a whole studio. You can't see it where I cut videos, and you can see them. I'm on YouTube with my videos.
Sweet.
So I'm very easy to find. Both my books are on Amazon.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of people have had to make that shift with COVID coming in, and with my job, I make a lot more videos as well. I mean, yeah, it is fun. It is really fun. But and really quick, also, what are some resources you could recommend for someone who is listening to this and saying, okay, I'd like to take a next step into my recovery or my path to getting better?
I mean, it just depends on for eating disorders. Project Heal is a great resource. NETA is a great resource. Eating Disorder Hope is a great resource. For addiction, I mean, it would just depend on the story. There are tons of resources. Reach out to me through my website. I'll guide you and tell me what you want recovery to be as it looks like for you, and I'll guide you to the appropriate resource.
Wow. I mean, honestly, I got to say, for anyone listening, like, Mr. Cuban, you just seem so humble and down to earth and kind and just eager to help people. And I really appreciate that. And I could tell just from the moment I messaged you, I was like, oh my gosh, he's responding right away. And he's being like, so like open to being on the show. So I really do appreciate that. And I thank you for your time. And again, just being so transparent with your story and the good, the bad, and where you're at now. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. It was an honor, and the best of luck with your podcast.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. I hope watching. Thanks for listening. Anyways, thanks for listening. Or I guess, if you do follow my YouTube channel, I try and put cute little clips of nature or, things I find aesthetic in the background of my videos. I'm trying to do that. So I guess if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're listening to this on a podcast, thanks for listening. So I'm going to go ahead and put links to Mark's books in the bio and other resources of his. And like I just mentioned, if you want, you can follow this on YouTube, or if not, definitely follow this podcast on whichever platform you're currently listening on. And yeah, email me any topics that you have interest in or any speakers that you have interest in. Bleh. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. And thank you for listening.